r/AskWomen. Competitive Mix 8617 says, how much should an engagement ring really cost? A $1K ring and a $10K ring can look the same. What do you think? I'm curious about everyone's thoughts on engagement ring prices. Some say you should spend months worth of salary, while others think it's more about personal preference. If a $1K ring looks just as good as a $10K ring, is there any point in spending more? How much do you think is reasonable to spend on an engagement ring? Novertrally says, it should cost as much or as little as the person purchasing it chooses to spend on a gift signifying their intent to marry that person. There is no standard and no requirement beyond what you and your partner decide you want. Beth Britt says, I like shiny things, but I'd marry you with paper rings. Quiet Painting 3 says, there's no amount it should cost, except I feel like you should never go into debt for it. What's reasonable depends on your financial situation, how important it is to each person, how they feel about jewelry, how they imagine wearing it, etc etc. Lost Ladder says, that's very much up to the couple. My set plus his ring were less than $500 combined. We picked them out together. I love my rings and wouldn't have it any other way. Shadow Spark says, some say you should spend months worth of salary. That's bullshit originated by De Beers marketing in the mid 20th century to make even more money off their monopoly on the diamond trade, and perpetuated by people who don't bother to examine where the idea came from or why exactly people should listen to it. Engagement rings should cost exactly the amount the people getting married want to spend on them. I think that people should always discuss preferences with their partner, because even a cheap ring is a significant expense, and nobody wants to be stuck with a pricey piece of jewelry that they hate. Shutai Officer Grandmas says, the value isn't in dollars, it's in the meaning of it. My engagement ring is the only piece of jewelry his mother owned. She died last year and he gave it to me. The banded silver, the stone isn't real, but I don't care. I love it. Agonist says, this is a question that doesn't have a right answer. It's a ring you hope to wear for life, so quality is obviously important, and a $1,000 ring looking as good as a $10K one doesn't necessarily mean it will hold up as well. I don't know enough about jewelry to know the minimum price a ring built to last will cost, but I also think that, unless you're in a tight financial situation, it's not good to start your marriage by trying to pay as little as possible for the symbol of your commitment. I say this as someone whose ideal engagement ring will be on the lower end of the cost scale, since I'm not a jewelry person and wear gloves most of the time at work. My priorities are durability and a unique stone. I like the look and individuality of salt and pepper diamonds and things like moss agate, which tend to be cheaper. The most important thing is just that both members of the couple agree. Sailor V says, it doesn't matter. Mine is a vintage Art Nouveau ring from Etsy that was around $150 and I love it to pieces. More than the price, he knew to get me something that was my aesthetic, my ethics, no diamonds, and not something so expensive I'd be freaked about wearing it. Dear Michael Logistical says, it depends on your financial situation and what's important to you. Personally, I have no interest in a ring that costs 5 figures. I'd be constantly worried about losing it. I'm aware that some people insure their rings, but if it's expensive enough to insure, then it's too expensive for me to wear. 5ly plus Invincalva says, the quality of a ring is more important than how it looks. An engagement ring is meant to be worn daily for a lifetime. It needs to be made from the right materials, by jewelers who know how to design a ring for both beauty and durability. There are plenty of inexpensive rings that look beautiful brand new, but they won't look like that for long if they are not well designed and substantial enough to withstand the wear and tear that engagement rings go through. The jewelry and engagement ring subs have plenty of posts about rings that fell apart within months because they were so poorly made. With the current price of gold, you might be hard pressed to find a nice setting alone for $1K. But as others said, there is no price that is right for everyone. For some couples a nice ring might be an important symbol of commitment, but some couples might choose to use that money for other priorities instead. Some people can drop $100K on a ring and not bat an eye. It's their money to spend how they see fit. Others might need to save up for a $5K ring. As long as both people are on the same page, every couple should decide for themselves what the ring means to them and how much to budget for it. r/AskWomen. Gold Bunch 1451 says, how often do you change your razors? Alison Harlan says, probably when I wash my bra. I kick. Stark says, when they start to feel dull. I have no idea about how long that takes, but they go dull much faster in the summer from shaving my legs more often. Funky Monkey 291 says, when it gets rusty. Scumbany says, I do downstairs always with a fresh razor. Sometimes pits and legs at the same time, after that razor has another 2 to 3 pit shaves left, so I put it in a specific area. If I'm not shaving downstairs, and just legs and pits, a razor can last 2 to 3 shaves of that manner. I never put a used razor on my vulva. Always fresh. But depending on the brand and what needs to be shaved, I can get a few more uses from that initial vulva razor. There's usually 2 razors going in my shower at a time. Vulva, pits, legs, cycled through the above mentioned process. When I pull out a new one for downstairs, I usually toss the pits one. Sweet Minnow says, every 3 months at the same time that I replace my toothbrush head and Brita water filter. Pancake Queen 13 says, probably around every 6 months. I'm using a replaceable razor, not the disposable ones. They last longer. I also care less about getting the cleanest shave ever, but when I start getting more ingrown hairs, I know it's too dull. Batchelf 247 says, after 2 to 3 full body shaves, legs, Brazilian, arms, underarms, happy trail. But I notice it wearing off after the first use. I use Billy. Solchicha 94 says, once a week. Lyricaline says, I use disposable. I can use a new one just once per week, because I shave my legs once/week and armpits daily. Tayphonix says, once a year, for that once a year, that I shave anything. Liberator Me Bananas says, you guys change your razors? /STBH I always end up losing mine within a couple of weeks or so. I travel with them, and I usually end up leaving them accidentally, so I'm always replacing them entirely lol. Scene says, every few uses. I have really sensitive skin that's prone to ingrowns, no matter what I do. It's so annoying and expensive. Parsnipok 8929 says, I use Harry's, and I go through 16 razor heads every 3 months. So, whatever the frick that equates to is the answer. Sovitslug 7,797,979 says, I use Harry's razors and I replay them maybe every 3 weeks, month and a half, depending on how often I use it, how quickly my hair grows. Rude Illustrator 884 says, I change the head of my razor after each use. By the time I've grown enough hair to shave again, the razors already grew rust. Maybe I could take better care of my razors, but I don't care enough to be honest. Ziggs 333 says, I have a razor that I refill with individual blades, and it can usually stay sharp for 5 uses assuming it's a full body shave, but I'll change it closer to 7/8 uses if I'm only using it here and there. Far Independence 918 says, when I get a new can of shaving gel, I also change out my toothbrush and sterapod sanitize cover when we get a new tube of toothpaste. I need a set routine or I'll forget. r/AskWomen. Firelight67 says, what's something that always makes your heart flutter? Graphic Materials says, diphenhydramine. Raya Suaha says, every time the pizza guy rings the doorbell without delay. Midnight Fire Huntress says, fan art of my favorite anime/video game characters shipped lol. Princess Dalio says, when I learned something new. Naughtinurse 31415 says, anytime my husband comes into view, if I haven't seen him in a while. But Mamit's Reddit says, animals being cute. Moonmas 223 says, when a guy laughs at my stupid jokes, instead of just saying okay. Requirement Fancy 7095 says, missing my fib meds. Hefty Expression 852 says, forehead kisses. Jenna Money says, seeing good things happen to people. Sleepaloop says, people who are passionate about music etc. Prompt No 9169 says, when I'm low on potassium. Little Ghoul says, whenever my boyfriend refers to me as my lady. It's just so cute and sweet. Embarrasstrub 107 says, seeing a kid with their dad, or a kid happy. Exciting Mission 929 says, getting pulled into a hug/kiss by the waist. Spaghetti Tie says, when my husband grabs my neck, back of the head, with his hand, when we are grocery shopping, or around friends etc. The hidden meaning screams loud in my head. Nancy Sweetick says, cats. Kittens. I love cats so much. Videos with kittens make me smile. Dr. Fiank says, tall, dark and handsome. Cup of coffee. What did you think? Bayless Ascaris says, when wild animals trust me enough to lay down next to me and just chill for a while. OK Confusion 2353 says, seeing or talking to my ex-partner. Thehjtachis says, when someone winks at me. Processor 2020 says, fanfiction. Celador says, Robert Carlyle. Rum Raisins 1999 says, your package has been delivered. Thanariel Nabadi says, men written by women. Riadam Alj says, watching Amelia de Moldenberg's chicken shop date with Andrew Garfield. Communication Time 424 says, beautiful eyes. Small Working 46 says, classic black and white films. Electrical Frontside says, my husband. Giraffes are cool 33 says, or thoughtful gesture big or small from someone that I like. Susatastic says, unsolicited think pics. Said no woman ever. Hal 9876 says, my dog she is precious. Thekor Alinoleni says, Henry Cavill. But also when I realize how much I love my husband, or when he does something particularly sweet. Spasalexi says, anxiety. Glittering South 5178 says, my stepdaughter, who I loved from the moment I first saw her, and who has independently expressed the same sentiment right back at me. I'm aware that having this strong of a bond/connection with your stepkid is a very unusual experience, and so it's all the more precious to me. Sometimes I almost feel as though she was someone, if not my child, who I knew in a former life. I'm biologically child-free and could never have imagined being a mother in any capacity. I can say now that loving and being loved by your kid is the most insanely beautiful feeling. I love being a stepmom. Everyone thinks this about their child, but she is truly the most perfect and special. Her dad's not bad either. Just kidding, he makes my heart flutter too. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.